Hello, YouTube. Today I would like to speak with you about inventory management, specifically in regards to PvP as well as weapon swaps. I know that there's various disparate guides across the internet about this sort of thing, but I thought I'd give you my perspective and maybe make a concise showcase of different inventory styles, swaps, why you may want them, or why you may not want them. Though I can't imagine why you wouldn't want them other than you're feeling lazy or just don't want to learn. Or maybe it's not important to you. But I digress. So let's get started. So first thing to note is whenever you open up your inventory and look at your weapons, the default is everything is sorted by item type, right? And if you click in the left stick, you can switch to order of acquisition, which allows you to place items in the storage box at any site of grace and pull them out in the order you would like them, starting left to right from the top left-hand corner. Thanks to the storage box available at every site of grace, this means that we can have any number of inventory configurations limited only by our imagination. Ahead, we will look at a few inventory layouts and discuss some of the pros and cons with each. This is by no means a comprehensive list, and I recommend you experiment with your own inventory to see what works. Then keep refining your inventory for both comfort and optimization. The first one I'd like to look at is what I refer to as the humble inventory. It is simple and low demand. It's very easy to upkeep. It's essentially just 2 rows of stuff you like. You could have it be 3 rows depending on how much you feel like you need. It doesn't require anyone usually dropping you items, as you have such a slim inventory or small inventory to begin with. You don't need to cheat. You don't need a ridiculous amount of new game cycles. It's a popular choice for people who just want it as simple as it can get. It's also easy to learn this small inventory, and it's also easy to change should you need to. The larger inventories that we'll discuss later on are far more cumbersome when it comes to changing them. Even a small change in the middle can be laborious. The downside with the humble inventory is that you're quite limited on weapon options as well as swap choices. Those who use this like to have a shield or a riposte tool often in the very first slot. This is also so while navigating you can have easy access to whatever tool you prefer more, whether you need it for parrying or riposting. This can of course be expanded to fit one's own needs, even to include concepts we will visit in other inventory styles. The next style I'd like to look at is what I refer to as the Slim. It's a step up from the humble inventory. The Slim offers a fair bit more utility, well as consistency. For my Pyromancer, which inventory I will be showing on screen now, I can easily swap to my 2 most used straight swords, the broadsword and longsword respectively, and swap to a simple spear above each that has the black flame tornado. To make a swap on an Xbox controller, you simply press start, and then AA, an input of your choice, whether it be up, down, left, right on the D-pad. A again, start, right? And the reason why you hit start is because it quickly gets you out of that menu. You don't have to be mashing B repeatedly to get out of those menus. For PlayStation players, just replace the A with an X. So it would be start, XX, directional input of choice, X again, start. And then an L2 if you need the Ash of War or whatever from your swap. Much like any skill, doing the swap slowly for consistency and eventually working on speed is the key. The next bonus afforded by the Slim inventory are the lines of either riposte, parry, or escape tools you may have lining the top and bottom rows. In my Pyromancer's inventory, for instance, I have Bloodhound Step on each rapier and Carry and Retaliation on each shield. When making swaps to my escape tool, I press Start, AA, L2, A, Start, and L2 again to use the Ash of War. If I needed a shield to parry an attack or a spell, I would have pressed R2 instead of L2 in that sequence. L2 goes up, R2 goes down. Now, you can have shields on your top row if you so desire. Some will swap using the trigger to a shield on the top row for a parry, and then they will swap again using the upward directional input on the D-pad to place the cursor at the bottom row where the riposte tool is. So imagine that there's a line of shields at the top and a line of misericord daggers on the bottom, or what have you. Because the inventories wrap. If you tab up when you're on the top row, you'll go to the bottom. Same with the bottom. If you tab down and you're on the very bottom row, it'll go to the top. If you are on the right-hand side of the screen and you tab to the right, it'll appear on the next row on the left-hand side of the screen, and vice versa. None of these inventories that I've talked about are set in stone. Experiment, optimize, figure it out, do it to your liking. Here's an example slim inventory for my purecaster. I can swap from the Lusat staff once for my straight sword, or use a single L2 while swapping for my rapier or escape tool, right? I can also swap one item to the right of my Lusat staff, should I need the more economical Regal Carrion Scepter. The obvious con with the slim inventory is that your options are relatively limited. However, it's a small con as the small inventory is easy to navigate and fairly optimized. The next inventory style I'd like to look at is the pillar, right? You may have noticed a trend where every inventory gets a smidge more complex. The pillar is similar to the slim, yet it encompasses a single page. Though you may choose to blend elements of its organization with principles we will see in other styles of inventory, here we have the core weapons of the build, right, in the center, 2 sacred Zweihanders, and similar weapons off to either side of it. We still have our escape rapiers at the top, with even a misericord for ripostes in the very first slot of our inventory. We have our right-hand weapon on the right. We have on the right-hand side of the inventory weapons meant for our right hand. And then we have their left-handed counterparts on the left-hand side of the inventory. And then complete with a 2x3 box of support items just before the shields near the bottom. Everything is still well within reach, and there's no fear of getting lost in one's inventory, especially when it's just one page. If you're new to inventory management and swaps, I would recommend you stop at a single page at most. You still have a great selection of options, and the inventory will be fairly optimized here. We can now introduce the concept of crosses, and not lose anyone, I hope. The top middle Zweihander is our core weapon. Off to each side is an option when making a swap. Above is the escape tool. To the left is a heavy thrusting sword for chase downs as well as having flaming strike. To the right of the Zweihander is the black flame tornado on the banished knight halberd, and below is another Zwei with golden land. Now, while the pillar is an inventory with a fatter cross than the average, like we'll see down the line, the best favor you can do for yourself is to make your crosses consistent between your characters, whatever you like. Now, when you're in your first experimental phase, that might be tough, but the more you try, the better you will be, or the better off you'll be. Often the pattern I fall into is that the top of a cross is my heavy hitting choice. To the right of the core weapon on a cross is a chase down tool, and then to the below the center of the cross is something quick that I need for a last hit, like Lightning Strike or the Falling Star Beast Jaws Ash of War. Now that's one preference, and I do deviate it from time to time. However, my hope is that this information will act as a framework for you to be creative in your own inventory. I patterned the pillar off of an inventory used by the YouTuber G9 that he used in a faith build, and I did that to kind of expand my horizons, to get me thinking outside the box and experimenting more and not falling in a rut, so to speak. The next inventory style I would like to look at, I refer to as organized chaos. It's a form of inventory that may only make sense to you. It doesn't necessarily have a consistent cross or crosses, yet nonetheless is hopefully familiar enough to you to make good use of hard swaps. To specify, a soft swap is having more than one item in your character's hand and you switching between them using left or right on the D-pad. A hard swap is when you change out a weapon using your menu instead. This is my current inventory that I have for my City Watch character. I patterned it after a strength inventory used by the YouTuber Steelovsky to again expand my horizons. It is worth noting that this is a right-handed inventory. Everything here is meant to be in my character's right hand. And we'll discuss left-handed inventories in a little later. However, there's nothing stopping you from consolidating to one page for simplicity. The only real abiding theme here, from what I can tell, is that a handful of useful weapons are around your core, in this case the broadswords, and then as you reach outward, like weapons are together. The two stitchers are side by side, the halberds and spear are touching, great swords hang out together, and the heavy lances have their own click. The con here is that it might be a little tougher to standardize your swaps with muscle memory. The pro is that you have lots of variety for playing with different weapons or meeting the needs of unique situations. Again, weapons in the same family are next to each other, and identical weapons are together for stealthy swaps. Stealthy swaps being, I switch from one broadsword to the other broadsword, my Ash of War changes, but my enemy sees nothing. Personally, I have sets of 25 weapons identical to each other beneath this inventory, and then my left-handed inventory is below that, and then my support items are at the very bottom, but we'll discuss those in depth a little later. The fifth style of inventory I would like to discuss are cross-based inventories, crosses, full, partial, etc. Having multiple crosses in your inventory is a great way to add options without increasing the complexity exponentially. Here we have my Enchanted Knights inventory, a strength build with a smidge of intelligence. The top row is still my escape tool rapiers, yet we have two crosses with our core weapons. The top of each cross is the heavy-hitting Ruin's Greatsword, the right part of the cross is the Stitcher for chase downs and Flaming Strike, and the bottom of each cross is a Falling Star Beastjaw to finish off foes or for high poise damage in the form of a ranged poke. This means that I have two core weapons, with the sub-weapons that are the same for both of these cores. My swap inputs are the same for each sub-weapon, which can be a blessing for muscle memory and split-second reactions. Now, crosses can come in far more shapes, sizes, and styles than I can feasibly cover in one video. You could have 5 core weapons in a row, and then have the same identical weapon above each of those core weapons, like a Ruin's Greatsword, and then below your 5 core weapons, all in a horizontal row, you could have the Falling Star Beastjaw over and over, right? I'd call those pillars and not so much crosses, but that's a small semantic difference. You could have 5 core weapons vertically if you really wanted to, and have the same sub-weapons on the right-hand side, or a different set on the left-hand side of that same pillar of your core weapons. You could have one large cross in the center of your inventory with everything built around it. Or you could be like me and have 2 crosses near the top of the inventory and then simply have familiar yet organized chaos beneath it. We can blend the concepts to fit your wants and needs. The con with these larger inventories is that you lose some optimization and you could get lost hunting for a weapon in the chaos. The pro with crosses is consistent swaps between your core weapons. Here's an example inventory with 4 crosses. I don't like hitting the left-hand D-pad for my swaps. Personal choice, I recommend that you be better than me. So we can see here that we have our 4 crosses, and the tops, right-hand sides, and bottoms are all the same, but the center, the core of each cross, is different for weapons that we like to play with. Here's another inventory made by a friend of mine who was just getting into PvP at the time. I'm sure without assistance, you could spot the core weapons as well as their crosses, right? I'll leave that on the screen for a handful of seconds. Now, I mentioned before that I like to have 2 sets of 25 weapons beneath my main inventory. This acts like an extra arm on your cross that isn't up, down, left, or right. Instead, it's found through the R2 button. Whether I'm using the organized chaos inventory or one with crosses, I can place 25 items beneath my main inventory for a weapon I want to access, no matter what weapon I have currently. And those 25 weapons are just as close in terms of how many inputs you're using to get to it as the sub-weapons that are around my cross. If you're feeling crazy, you could have another set of 25 weapons for 2 R2 presses beneath your main inventory, though that extra press adds time, and that's the risk when you increase the size of your inventory so much. Generally, I'll put my support items like great bows, great shields, regular shields, casting catalysts, and the like beneath my set of 25 weapons. By holding down the R2 button when you're swapping, you can blast to the bottom of your inventory to find what you need. Often my very last row will be my parry implements because I use them infrequently. Now, left-handed inventory is something I'd like to talk to you about. It's something I've discovered a little more recently. This is my max level character, like I said earlier. I'm going to show you his left-handed inventory, right? So we look here. Here's my right-handed inventory. We have a set of 25 weapons, another set of 25 weapons, and then these top 2 rows are my left-handed inventory. All these weapons are supposed to be in my left hand for whatever I need them for. A lot of the Ashes of War are simply Braggart's Roar because it's an Ash of War that you can use, two-handing your left-hand weapon, use, and then go back to using your weapon paired style. And the right-hand counterparts are above. So, for instance, I could have the McKellen's Night Sword in my right hand, and I will go down for my left-handed inventory for my quality longsword, right? Swap to it. Left-handed, I can use Braggart's Roar for the AR buff. And then I can have McKellen's Night Sword and still have the paired attack and my Ash of War in my right hand. And if I need to swap my right hand, I can put the inputs, go to the left for Endure, and so now I have Endure as the option, but I still have Braggart's Roar active. As you can see, there's the red particle effects. My left-hand weapon doesn't change, but my right-hand weapon does. And then for different combinations, I could go down to the Lance, and then my left-hand inventory will go to my left-handed Lances, right? And that's nice because when you go and swap your first left-handed item, hopefully it's already in the ballpark of those weapons, all my left-handed items. I don't have to go from a weapon up here and find the weapon of choice for my left hand. They're already hanging out together. So we'll just explain the inventory a little bit on this character, right? So first slot is my crit dagger, and then I have they're all escape tools with my rapiers. I have my crosses here, even though I was using the McKellen Knight Sword, right? Above the McKellen Knight Sword is the Ruin's Greatsword. To the right is the Moonveil for a quick dispatch or big chunk of damage. And then beneath it is the Falling Star Beast Jaw. My other core weapon, as you can see, is the Dark Moon Greatsword, with the Ruins to the top, Moonveil to the right, Falling Star Beast below, and then I just kind of have an organized chaos beneath it. So it's a hybrid inventory. I have 25 Stormhawk axes that I can access anytime with a very fast swap that I could use to handle a group of players who are being very aggressive, or to just do sustained damage to somebody who's weak to lightning or what have you. Whatever I want to use that Stormhawk axe for, no matter what weapon I am at, it is a single R2 press to get to it. Sure enough. And then beneath that, I have the Nox Flowing Hammer, because I'm crazy on this fellow's inventory. In case I need to hit somebody through a wall, I have that option. And then we have the left-handed inventory under my sets of 25. I have all my casting implements in a single row. And then I have a bunch of support weapons that I only need from time to time beneath that. I have my ranged options, shields, great bows near the bottom should I need them fast for either a rain of arrows or a golem arrow plus golem great bow to just do a good chunk of damage, knock somebody over. And then I have my parry tools at the bottom. So that is an example inventory. It's not as refined as it could be, of course. Another thing to note, I mentioned wrapping earlier. So if I needed to swap, let's say from the quality longsword that has endure to the Bloodgrave Scythe, it makes more sense that I tap left once, utilizing the wrap of the inventory, as opposed to tapping right, up. It's important to note that you can have a cross of your inventory up against the side of the inventory, and the left-hand wing or branch of your cross could be up above in the previous row. And I'll leave a highlight on the screen to exemplify that for a second. All right. So, bonus round, talismans. Now, while these swaps can be helpful, just trimming the amount of talismans you don't need out of your inventory and placing your more common ones together can be a lifesaver. There are several configurations to meet your needs. I'll show you one of mine, and hopefully from that you can come up with your own quite easily. I like to have my blue and red feathered branch swords near the top corner of my inventory to get to quickly. The other useful tidbit is that if you press L1 or R1, you will swap between your talisman slots. So if you look in the top left-hand corner, it's talisman 1, a single R1 goes to talisman 2, 3, 4, back to 1. So some people will do, they'll say you need those talismans equipped, those branch sword talismans, right? They'll go start, A, down, 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 A, and then they will go up to the blue feathered branch sword, and then they need to switch their second item as well, or their second talisman, right? So they'll hit R1 to save time, and then they'll go up. You could do an L2, for instance, and then left, left. And now I have both of those, and start, and I'm out. And it's pretty fast, instead of having to go in and out for each of these, like I am doing here, the slow way. Trying to remember what was in that slot. I had the Millicent prosthesis. Okay. So, to explain the talisman inventory, I have the blue and red feathered branch swords up here. I have the Shard of Alexander and all the talismans I like to use near it. Just kind of in a brick here. The more niche talismans are going to be farther away from the Alexander Shard, essentially, since the Alexander Shard tends to be my core talisman for my #1 slot. On the right-hand wall of my inventory, I like to put the status immunity, the status resistant talismans. And then at the bottom of my inventory, I have the Crimson Seed, so no matter which talisman I'm swapping out, I can hold down the R2 and get to one really quickly. So if I needed a heal, I could go to my Alexander Shard, R2, and then get to one. Or I can get to my crit talisman really fast, or I can get to my hammer talisman if I need to break a shield. And you can also use L2 to get back to the top of that inventory if you so need. Those L2 and R2s are very handy for navigating, especially when you take into account that there's wrap. I can press down once from the Crimson Sea Talisman and get to my blue feathered branch sword and back to the Shard of Alexander. So keep in mind those wraps. A good resource you can use when theory crafting these inventories is none other than the Elden Ring Inventory Planner. You can Google that phrase, Elden Ring Inventory Planner, but I'll also leave a link in the description as well. That's kind of the ins and outs of inventories. I took a little longer than I meant to, but I hope it's helpful to you, and I hope you have a good day. Take care.